this video, I am going to show you how to create a teacher test in Eduphoria so that students can take it via the online testing option. First, you're going to log into Eduphoria. Once logged into Eduphoria, you are going to click on the Aware option to open Aware. Once Aware opens and loads, on the left-hand side, you're going to click on the Assessments tab. Once in the Assessments tab, you're going to have the ability to search for assessments if you've created them before. And down at the bottom, you have the option to create a test. Now, depending on what type of access you have, you may only see a few of these options. So I'm going to click on Create a New Blank Test. Once I click on that option, it's going to open up to ask for general information about the test. Anything with an asterisk, a little star next to it, means that that item is required. So first, give your test a name. I am just going to call mine Practice Test. Make sure the title is descriptive so that you know which test you're looking for. Underneath that, you're going to choose your subject area for the test. And then underneath that, you will pick the grade level for the test. The reason you are picking these options is because this is how Eduphoria will sort it. In the assessment area, it sorts by these. You can also search for tests by the title, so make sure you know the title and you'll be able to find your test more easily. Up at the top for test type, you're going to click on that option, and depending on what type of level you have, you may be able to create team tests, campus tests, or other assessments, but most teachers will only have the ability to create a teacher test, so that is a test that only you have access to. And then underneath that option is the option to add a course that it is associated with. By doing this, it is going to set the TEKS for the actual test, so you can tag questions with TEKS for data analysis. So I'm going to click Add a Course. You'll then expand to whatever level and whatever content area, and then you would pick that course. You can add additional courses as well if you needed it to tag multiple TEKS. Then underneath at the bottom, the performance levels are optional, so you can set these if you want to, or you can leave them blank. I'm going to leave them blank at this time, and so once you are done with all of the general information, you're going to click Generate Test. Once the test is generated, it's going to open in this view. You may also see some options on the left side. What we're going to do first is I'm going to click on the General tab at the top to show you that everything we just did is located under General. So if you needed to make any changes, this is where you would do it. And if you scroll down, you can see those performance levels again. If you needed to add instructions, you could. And then if you needed to delete this assessment completely, this is where you would do it. You would click on that Delete button. I'm going to go back to the Questions tab, and we're going to take a look here because this is where we are going to actually create our test. If you click on the option for status, you have three options. Pending means that no one can see it. You can't give the test out. You are working on the test. Active means that you would see it in the Analyze tab to be able to assign it out so students could take it. And then archived means you no longer need the test. You wouldn't be giving it anymore, so you would archive it. So we're going to leave it as pending while we create. Next to that, you have the option to toggle on alternate lettering. So this would be one question would be A, B, C, D. The next question would be the HIJ options, or F, you know those other options. And then the next toggle next to that is the test summary. So if you toggle that on or off, it's going to get rid of the summary of your questions. When I'm building, I like to turn that off just because it gives you more screen real estate here in the middle to work from and to see your questions. But you can leave that toggled on. So what we're going to do is we are going to add some questions to our test. So we're going to click on the plus sign. Once you click on the plus sign, you get the option to either add an item or search the item bank. Currently right now, the item bank is not available for teacher and campus tests. So the only option you have is to add an item. So we're going to click add item. And then the question box is going to pop up. Up at the top, you have the option for the different question types. You have selected response, which is multiple choice or multiple selection. You have constructed responses, which are short answer or essay questions. You've got the numerical response, which would be like a griddable type question. And then you have a resource, and a resource is a material that you would use to link multiple questions to, like a chart, a graph, a picture, a map, or a reading passage. We're going to look at each one of these, so we're going to keep it on selected response first. Underneath that, this second kind of row that's in this box is available on all of the different response question types. So on the left, it's asking you to select a standard to tie this question to. So we're going to click on the primary standard plus sign box. When you do, it goes to the course that you attach to this test, and it gives you all of the different standards. You can filter and search if you're looking for something specific or a certain word, and then all you do to add that standard is you tap to select, and it would add that standard to this question. If there was a secondary standard, you would do the exact same thing. Click on secondary standard and pick your secondary standard. If you needed to clear these out, click on them and choose clear standard, and it would erase it from the box. Off to the right, you have the DOK complexity scale. If you needed to tag your question there, you could pick one of those and it would change the option. And then you do have the option to change the weight of the question. We suggest to leave this alone, leave it as 1. And if you needed to come back later because a question may be bad and you need to throw that question out, you can always come back and change the weight to 0, and then you can rescore your test and it would give you the grade if you needed to throw that question out. So just leave it as 1 for now. Directly underneath that, you have the option, since we picked a selected response, you have multiple choice question or multiple selection. Multiple choice means that you are giving the students multiple answer choices to pick from, and there's only one correct answer. Multiple selection means that you can have 2 answer choices that are correct, but they both have to be selected. So if you have 2 that you say are correct, both have to be selected. It's not one or the other. It's an and situation. Okay. Directly underneath that, you have your text options for formatting. So you can change the font size, bold italics. You can do some different sub and superscripts. You can also remove formats that may be there, add in tables, images, numbered lists, bulleted lists. You can also change the indentation and the alignment as well. And then for my math folks and science folks, there is a math option for you to add in different equations, so an equation editor. So I'm going to type in my first question. And for this question, I am going to add in a picture. So I'm going to click on this picture icon here to insert a file into my question. And it's going to ask me to insert either an image, audio, or video file from my computer, and it's going to embed that into this question. So I'm going to choose a file that I have on my computer, and then I'm going to choose insert file. It's going to upload that picture. If I needed to resize the picture, if I click on it, down in the bottom right hand corner there is a black box that if you hover on top of, you can click and drag to resize that image if you need to. The other thing that you need to make sure to do when you are working with images is you're going to need to update the alternate text that goes along with that picture, so that if students have the accommodation of speech to text, it's going to read information whenever it gets to the picture. So to change this, you get to that option two ways. You can either double click on the picture and you're going to get the image properties box, or you can right click on the picture and choose image properties. Once you do that, you're going to see alternate text is going to show up, and it's going to put in whatever that file name was. So we're going to want to change this to be either something descriptive in the picture. If it's a map and there are labels, you would want to label that as well. Another option that you have available to you is you can upload an audio file of you reading what it should say correctly, because the text to speech may not read it the exact correct manner that you need it read. So that option is available too. So I'm going to put man with dark brown hair and a scowl, I hope I spelled that right, on his face. And then if I needed to, I could change this height width here. I can change the alignment of the picture as well. And then I'm going to click OK. And so now if this was a text to speech option, that's what would be read when it got to that picture. So then I'm going to put in my responses for the answer. Notice the first option is the correct option. I'm going to click add a response. If I needed to delete one, I can click on the trash can to delete it. If I needed to reorder these, I can click to reorder them. But one of the great features of the Eduphoria online testing is that it gives you the ability to scramble the answer options and scramble the questions. So you can randomize as well. So I'm going to put in my other options, and then I've got my question all set. So then I'm going to click on create, and it's going to place that question into my test. I can see what has been tagged here at the top for that standard. Over on the left, since I have the test summary open, I'm going to see how many DOK 1, 2, or 3 questions I have. I'm going to get a summary of the different standards that I add and the different types of questions. So that's available to you as well. You can also delete the question. If you need to come back and edit it, you would click on that edit pencil and it would open the question back up for you to be able to make changes. So I'm going to click update. We're going to add another question. If I click the add button at the top, it's going to add the question above the one I already created. If I click the add button at the bottom, it would add that question afterwards. If you're going to turn on the randomization, it doesn't matter what order you put them in because it's going to randomize whenever the kids get it. So I'm going to do it from the top. I'm going to add a new item. This time I'm going to pick a constructed response. So this is one where my students are going to have an essay or a short answer. So again, in the middle, I've got my options to update my standards, change my DOK, and then I have question text at the top and a scoring guide at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and enter my question in, and then I'll explain these other pieces. Again, I can format the same as I did on the previous question. Right above where I typed in my question, you've got your different question options. So I can change the score values, minimum value, maximum value. I can set this as teacher graded or not. I can give the option on how many rows the students are going to see whenever they get the test. And so this is going to change depending on if they're getting a printed version or an online version. And I will show you a preview of what this all looks like on the online version once we complete creation. There is a text width option. Again, depending on if you're printing or if it's an online version, that's going to look different. And then you can choose to add lines or not. If you choose add lines, if they're doing the online version, it will not add lines. The lines are only for the printed version of the test. And then at the bottom for the scoring guide, this is where you would type in your rubric information on what is a score of 1, what is a score of a 2. It is not going to score automatically. The teacher or you are going to have to read the response that the students make and then give that score. So once you have those items set, You can again add a picture here if you wanted to, a graphic, a map, a reading passage. I'm going to then choose create at the bottom, and it's going to add that question right above. If I wanted to reorder these, the arrows next to those question numbers allow you to move it up or move it down. You can also drag to reorder. So if I wanted to reorder those two questions, I could drag them to reorder. I'm going to add a third question. This time I'm going to do a numerical response. Again, it gives me the option to enter the question. I can add a picture, I can add a video, or I can add audio, and I can change any of the formatting. Up at the top, it's going to give you the options for what is the answer going to look like. So I can choose a decimal point, fixed or floating. And then I can pick, if I pick floating, it's only going to give me a certain number of columns. If I pick fixed, it's going to ask how many boxes before the decimal and how many boxes after the decimal. I can also allow for negative values. And then at the bottom, since I said the decimal point is fixed, my answer must include a decimal. If I pick floating, I don't have to have a decimal point. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it as floating and put in my answer and say create. And I know I didn't add my standard or my DOK, but I'm going to show you another place we can add that in just a minute. Okay, so last what we're going to do is add in a resource. So I'm going to choose my question type and I'm going to pick resource. Notice everything we had before goes away and all I have is the title and the text. So the title, what you're going to put in here is the name of this resource so that when you go to link a question to it, that's the title that's going to show up so you know which resource you're adding. So I'm going to call this Hogwarts House Crests. And here I'm going to take out the text and I'm going to add an image. So I'm going to pick on that insert file, choose my file, and I have my picture here. And I'm going to say insert. Again, if I needed to resize or wanted to resize, I can scroll down to the bottom and drag that in or out. If I needed to add any additional text to this resource, I could. So I could also have a reading passage that goes along with this picture here as well. And then remember that since this is a picture, I do need to go update the alternate text. So I'm going to double click on the image properties and change that alternate text to Hogwarts. And then I'm going to click OK. And now I have my resource. So I'm going to click create and it's going to add my resource to the test. So what I need to do with this resource is now link questions to it because I may have one picture and the students are answering 5 questions that go along with that one picture and you want that one picture to always show up with those questions. So instead of adding the picture to the individual question like we did here with the picture of Professor Snape, I would only have to add the picture once and then Eduphoria knows that those questions are linked, so it would always put that picture with those questions. So there are 2 ways to link questions to a resource. If you notice, this resource has its own little plus sign right in here with it. So I'm going to click on that option and it's going to ask me, do I want to add a linked question? And that's exactly what I want to do. So I'm going to choose add linked question. I have the options that I can pick my standard, pick my DOK, and then I'm going to ask my question. And once I have all of that in there, I'm going to click create at the bottom. And now that question is linked and it tells you the resource has one linked item, that question. So these two go together. Another way you can do this is if you ask a question. So I'm going to add an item. I'm going to say constructed response. I'm going to say describe each of the, describe the Slytherin crest in detail. So that now they've got to describe that for me in my box. I'm going to give them 4 lines this time just so that we can see the difference. I'm going to do create. So now this question is outside of that resource. So if I need to link these together because I made a mistake, I added a question later, I added the resource later, All I need to do is right above that question, there's a link icon. So you're going to click on that link. It's going to ask you, what resource do you want to link to? So the only resource I currently have here is the Hogwarts house crest. So I'm going to click on that to put a check mark and say update. And now it's going to put that question with the Hogwarts crest. Now, if you are doing randomized questions, it's going to keep these questions together and it's going to randomize within the resource, and then it'll randomize the other questions outside of that. Okay, so all you've got to do is keep adding those questions until you're done. You've got your different options over here on the left. Pretty much the test is complete at this point. So I've got my questions. What I want to do next is kind of preview it and look at it. So if I go to layout, if you were printing this, you could choose your different option on what it's going to look like for your test booklet, what the Scantron might look like, so you can kind of scroll to see those different options. But most of our kids are probably going to be taking the online version, and we'll look at that in just a second. We're going to look at test key next. So we're going to go to test key. Here, I can see my different questions, what the correct answer was. I can see all my weights and I can see all my standards. So if I made a mistake and I left off a standard, if I just click on the edit button, it's going to allow me to add in the standards that I might have missed or change the item weight or the correct response. Notice it doesn't give you the option to change the DOK level. So if you needed to change that, you would have to go back to questions and then click on the pencil for a question to change the DOK level. So I'm going to go back to test and I'm going to update my other option here. So now I've got all my standards are linked. I'm going to click on the save button. All my questions are linked. If I needed to unlink from a resource, I can do that here, and I can also link a resource if I didn't do it on the questions tab. The last thing that you need to look at is the administration tab. From here, what is really nice is if you look kind of directly over here on the right all by itself, there is a preview online testing option where you can see this is what it would look like for your students if they were taking this test. So here's my first question. I can click next. There's my next question. There is my griddable option. There is my selected response, and then there is another constructed. And notice that no matter which one I pick, it's not going to matter how many lines on the online version. The students are going to be able to type as much as they need to, and it's going to continue to let them type, and the box is going to expand. So really those lines are really only there for a printed test booklet. So I'm going to close this preview. Okay, now let's look at the settings on the left. So for your online testing, you do want to leave the testing style as interactive, and you have some options that you can toggle on. So the first option is enable calculator. So if your students need that enabled, this is where you would do it. It's a different location than the student supports. So you're turning this on or off for everyone to be able to have that access. The student summary settings, so you can allow them to view submitted responses. You can also toggle on that randomization to randomize, and it does give you a reminder to make sure that your resources are properly linked so that the pictures and the resources go along with the questions that go with them. Text to speech, you have this option to pick English only or Spanish only, or let the students choose. And then the last option for lockdown browser, you're going to want to make sure to leave that off currently. It currently does not work on the iPads, and for a computer, there is an additional installation that has to be done. So we would want to leave that off for now. If you needed to print a sample answer document, you can do that from here as well. And then that is pretty much it. Your test is made. Once you're ready for the students to be able to take it, up here at the status at the top, you're going to click on that and choose active. And then once you've activated your test, you're ready to go to the Analyze tab and make it available to your students. So that is how you create a online test in Aware in Eduphoria. If you have any questions, please let us know.